Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest. And now, your host, Bruce Broussard.
Welcome again to this segment of the Oregon Voters Digest. I'm Bruce Broussard, your host. Folks, we've got a busy week. We had a busy week this past week, and the week before that was pretty busy also, too. I mean, some very interesting things are happening. In fact, the elections are going on right now. I mean, we got an election right now. We got the debates and everything else is going on right now on the tube. The presidential election is still there.
Oh, really?
It's still there. We're still discussing these issues. Mm-hmm. And in all due respect, maybe that's a good sign. That's a good sign because the rationale, the point I'm making here is that last week was a busy week, and then all of a sudden that past weekend, we had this whole big demonstration down in Virginia, in Charlottesville aspect of it. And for many of us, in all due respect, who don't read newspapers, who can't afford Comcast, who don't look at TV, et cetera, that was huge, folks. And what we're going to do this particular show, we're going to share this with you and tell you what the significance of that event was all about. But more specifically, what does it do for you here personally in Oregon, in Portland, Oregon? And we're going to discuss it that way, okay? So, and then what I've been doing, I've been throwing out a theme and trying to figure out what kind of a theme can we throw on the table that will resonate from the standpoint that we all need to be a part of the process of a solution. And that is having to discuss, the brand would be racism and hate. Hate and racism. That's the key. And we're all affected and impacted by it. So the name of the game is that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be trying to figure out a solution. First we got to find out how it come about, so to speak. And then at the end of the day is that, okay, now here are the results in a positive way. Got me? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like where we're going to be going. That's the brand. And I've got two people here today with me that, in all due respect, have spent many hours, foot time, the whole 9 yard, out there in community. As far as I'm concerned, they're probably one of my two top, one of the state's two top activists, community activists in the country, as far as I'm concerned. But we got them in Portland, Oregon, and they're right here. But but it's very important that we know that. But I got these two guys here. I've got Jamie Partridge. You might have seen Jamie if you're in the Portland metropolitan area, up in maybe the northeast Portland area. He delivered my mail for a long time. And I saw him, and he also at the same time he had enough time to get very much involved in the community. So we want to thank you very much for being here, Jamie.
Thank you,
also
Bruce.
Thank you for your time that you've been spending, and you're still spending time. You're not retired.
Well,
okay.
I've stopped working for the People's Postal Service, but I'm.
That's right. You're still
now
out
I'm just
there.
working for the people.
That's right. I know that for a fact. And then we got Danny. We got Danny Bell. Danny's been around here. He's a community person. He's been very, very active in the community. And he's got a lot of wisdom that he brings to the table. Another community active aspect of it. I mean, he's been out there. And Danny, we want to thank you, in all due respect, for the many hours you spent trying to deal with the issues of our community. Very much so here in the Portland metro area. Well, not just the community in Portland, but in the state of Oregon and elsewhere around the country, because I've seen your name elsewhere running around. So welcome again. Okay.
Thanks a lot.
All right,
Thanks
buddy.
for inviting me.
Sounds great. Well, like I said. And before that, we got a couple of little comments. I'm sure you'll be familiar with these areas that we want to make to begin with. Is that Dick Gregory just passed away. Mm-hmm. Dick Gregory just passed away. He was 84 years old, and he died yesterday. Mm-hmm. He passed away yesterday. And he was a comedian, but then there was a lot of other things that he was very much involved in. Mm-hmm. He was, a civil rights activist, a social critic. Not just a civil rights, he was a social critic, health care, a writer. Yeah. He was a writer. He was an entrepreneur, business person, and an actor. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And then again, like I said, he resided,
family man.
Very much so. And he resided in Washington, D.C. when he passed away. Mm-hmm. So we give kudos to Dick Gregory and my friend R.I.P. Rest in peace, my brother. And we're gonna always remember you. We're gonna make sure that we recognize you at the Oregon Voters Digest here. And again, that's Dick Gregory. Dick Gregory. Again, R.I.P., rest in peace. And then the other guy that was somewhat comparable, another big icon in that arena of comedy, was Jerry Lewis. Jerry Lewis died today. He was 91 years old. 91 years old today. But here we got two big icons, big guys, comedian types aspect of it. And Jerry too was very much involved in community, in terms of fundraising and things like that. But then here's some of his background. He was an actor, naturally he was a comedian, a singer, film producer, film director, a screenwriter, and a humanitarian. You got two big guys, basically, just basically side by side routine, and they knew one another, by the way, intimately, both of them.
Well, they were part of an era.
Yes,
very much. They were part of an era in entertainment.
Any comments, guys, on that?
Well, my interaction with Dick Gregory was in the streets of Chicago at the Democratic National Convention in 1968, when this huge grouping of young people protesting the Vietnam War, were getting beaten up by the cops, and we wanted to march to the convention center, and the cops were not going to let us. They said, "You can't march to the convention center." And Dick Gregory got up at the microphone and he said, "I want to invite you all to my house. I live over here on the south side, which happened to be on the other side of the convention center. Right. Just follow me."
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
And we did.
Did you guys take
so
up
funny.
on it? You guys,
yeah, we did.
And it worked.
Well, it actually didn't work. The cops did stop us, but
Exactly.
it just gives you a sense of how he inserted himself into the movement, but in a humorous way.
Yes. How about you, Danny? Any reflections or something?
We brought Dick Gregory here, I believe, in the early 1980s. There was a
Portland, Oregon?
There's a Portland, Oregon, at a centenary church. Centenary Methodist Church. You might be familiar with it. And the guy that I worked with his name was Ray Eaglin. He was well known in the University of Oregon as a radical personality. And we brought him here, and I just talked to him briefly, nothing more than say hi and bye. But I'm proud to say that I was a party to actually bringing him here. That's like 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, good enough, guys. Well, good. Well, I'll tell you what. Like I said, we want to make sure we remember these two guys. They ran back to back, day after one or the other. Okay, good. All right. Now, what we're going to do now is that we're just going to get right up in there, and then I guess the way we do that is first, Jamie, I'm just going to jump right on your end of it because there was some activity. Again, like I said, we're going to be. The idea is we're talking about the Virginia and Charlottesville aspect of it, but then its impact on Oregon, got me? And for solution-wise, what did we do as a result of what we saw and the activities were there? Maybe you can just kind of share with us basically what the event was all about in that area, so to speak, and then we'll just bring it back home and then we'll have a discussion. Okay, Jamie, what do you think?
Well, what happened in Charlottesville just a week ago, it seems like it was longer than that, a week ago Saturday, was a mobilization, the biggest white nationalist and KKK Nazi mobilization maybe ever, where there was I think they thought about 500 or 600 who were quite disciplined and marching with shields and helmets, and basically invaded the college town of Charlottesville to intimidate that liberal island in Virginia, and basically with the intention of protecting a Confederate monument that was they were deciding to the Charlottesville.
So that was the
decided. They were defending the Old South and the principles of the Confederacy, and of course the counter protesters were mobilized as well to defend their city. Basically, and what happened was the fascists, these white nationalists, systematically assaulted. Just took over parts of the city and systematically assaulted vulnerable people of color, and attacked the counter-protesters, including, of course, this young man who was associated with, I think it was called the American Vanguard, one of these Nazi groups, weaponized his car and smashed into a group of the counter-protesters, injuring 19 and killing 1. So it was a similar kind of situation to what happened in Portland on May 26th, when a white nationalist, after being part of one of these rallies in Portland, on a MAX train, intimidated and got involved with a confrontation where he killed 2 people in a racist incident.
So there's been a lot of things going on.
So yeah, people and people who are horrified by this really felt it as a real gut punch to, oh my God, what is happening to our country? That these things are that people are being killed by these racist bigots and mobilizing in the streets. And assaulting people like that.
One other thing, going back to the Virginia aspect of it, the first, as one would say, the first round that was shot over the bow as related to the Confederacy was the flag being taken down. Remember? Right. That was being taken down. In fact, who was that? That was the governor, I guess, of Carolina, right? Was it North Carolina or South Carolina? One of them. But my point, she's now the United Nations representative at this point in time. I don't remember her name right off the bat.
Ambassador of the United Nations.
But the bottom line is that was the start, so to speak, and then all of a sudden now it evolved in the statues aspect of it, and so like you said, then we had this event, but we had a similar event here, but it wasn't about the Confederacy flag. I think it was Joy Gibson group, and basically gotten a permit to go to the federal building over there, I guess. And then we had that situation here in the Portland area. Aspect of it. So we're right into the melee of it all. You know what I'm saying? Danny, any thoughts?
Well, this is part of an inevitable arc where racism has been central to activity as a nation state in America. What Trump did, his ability to convey a message that resonated with people that felt totally disaffected. And their reason for living, the reason for being, they have posited that in what they call their culture or their way of life. But it's like a move of desperation. There's a book called 100 Little Hitlers. I know you might have heard of it. It's written by a woman in Portland. It's about Tom Metzger and the Siwa incident.
Oh, yeah. Was it Mulugeta Sarah, the killing in 1988?
Right.
Yeah.
And she's a journalist, and she documents how that evolved and what the life of the participants who actually killed Sarah, what that looks like. And a lot of it is that you have a group of disaffected people who are living their lives in quiet desperation, and to give it meaning, they act out. It's almost like some kind of interpretation of tribal, activity. This is how they act out and validate themselves. So this is part of a long continuum. This continuum has been going on ever since the Constitution and how they molded the Constitution and the preamble. Because it goes back to the Cotton Gin when the founding fathers put that document together. They had envisioned dismantling slavery. But with the invention of the cotton gin, which was by a black person, by the way, that made cotton a lucrative product, because it used to take 6 weeks to get the cotton seeds out of cotton. So the mechanics of it.
Right.
So all of a sudden, you had this very profitable product, agricultural product, and you needed labor to get the product, right? So now you have an economic rationale to justify racism. You see what I'm saying? So that's obstructed what the founding fathers had envisioned about dismantling slavery. And another thing slavery did was it devalued the northern workforce, because the northerners were competing against a labor force that all you had to do was put clothes on their back and put food in their belly.
Couldn't compete. That's that north-south thing.
Right. So then you get a classic Roman type of approach where you divide and conquer. You see what I'm saying? And you as a labor person would understand that.
That's what Frederick Douglass said. He said they divide they divide each other to conquer. They divide the two to conquer each. So you ended up in a civil war with the poor white fighting against the poor white. You know, the Union Army and the Confederate Army, and somehow the poor whites were so identified with their white skin that they couldn't identify with the laborer in black skin who was basically living a similar lifestyle, enslaved.
Well, they had white sharecroppers too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of propaganda out there. At one point in time, and you can get this on OPD, we have a bunch of series on. When the United States was first set up, there's some really interesting things. Everybody who had the financial wherewithal, black, white, Indian, or whatever, could own a slave. And then another thing happened. The first case to go to the Supreme Court was one black man owned another black man, and he went to court and filed suit.
About what?
Being a slave.
Being a slave.
Right. Okay.
Were they competing for a slave? Or
No, I didn't get it, but that is the first case to go to the American Supreme Court.
Okay, so the idea is
where a guy challenges slavery by another black man.
So it's black on black this time.
Right.
Wow. Well, now, was that during the Lincoln era?
Oh, this is way before Lincoln. This is in the 1700s.
Okay, so Lincoln basically...
I mean, that is now look, as long as they had a Supreme Court, that's how far back it goes. And that goes back into the 1700s, not the 1800s. Lincoln was the mid-1800s, which is 1860.
Right.
But all this stuff is incremental, you know? They say Andrew Jackson was the person that was responsible for the Civil War because his personality was so, divisive. You know, he shot a man on the lawn in the White House. See what I'm saying? So you have this economic component that has to be justified and validated. And then if you have poor whites who are also sharecroppers and who, by the way, could also be indentured servants. See what I'm saying? The thing with an indentured servant, after they put in their 3-5 years, then they got 5 acres or whatever acres. But after you codify slavery and codify it by color, then it makes it much more manageable in terms of social control.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
And then you have the element of validating. White people could easily validate their import in life by saying I'm white and I'm better than you.
Well, and also they got land and they got to be on the slave patrol.
Right.
Paid to be on the slave patrol.
So it's kind of like being Rome has several classes of citizens, first citizen, second citizen, all the way down to slaves, etc.
Okay.
It's a very similar operation. It's almost like a caste system like they have in India. And the people is just like now. You got billionaires and gazillionaires trying to vie for control to divvy up things for themselves. What is it? So 0.5% of the population has 99% of the wealth in America.
So it's all economics.
Well, and what we've been seeing over the last couple decades is wages have been stagnant. You know, people's housing costs are going up and medical costs are going up, and you got this huge suicide and opioid addiction epidemic among white people.
Yeah, big time.
And that's the desperation we're talking about here. And the Trump phenomenon has allowed people to focus that on not on the 1% where all the money's going, but rather at black people, immigrants, Muslims, LGBTQ folk.
A well-known technique in political social control, where people, it's like a glass ceiling. Well, that's me. You project that, and then that becomes you because you're white. You see what I mean?
But again, going back to our
But I want to talk about the wealth.
But
more people are getting wealthier and wealthier, but they're all in the same strata.
Okay, but again, this one issue that we're kind of talking about right now is the whole issue of racism.
Yep.
Don't forget
racism and women hate. Hate and racism, and here we are in this situation right now. And then you ask yourself the question. One of the things is as you were talking about this history of racism and hate, actually to a certain degree, from the layman's standpoint, sort of originated with Lincoln because he was shot and identified as the slavery aspect of it. But a lot of times that history that you're talking about is never taught in the schools.
Right.
I mean, every president had an issue and policy and solution when they were elected on the issue of hate and racism. Every president from Lincoln on down talked to the issue of race. His was the Civil War aspect of it. And then every president, think about that, every president, but I've not done all that research, but the fact of the matter is, here we are sitting today, and this president is talking about race and hate.
Oh, yes, he is.
Now, the name of the game is that, now he's been there, what, about 8 months now or whatever? And it's getting heated up, but with technology and this, that, and the other, people are getting involved to a certain degree. So now it's kind of like being pushed in the front of the line, as if to say, and to a certain degree, I think that we're going to really get to some sort of a solution of some sort. And for instance, the First Amendment right, I'm just throwing that out on the table. It says everybody has a right to speech, right? The freedom of speech aspect of it. But then when that situation happened up in Charlottesville aspect of it, everyone knew that there was going to be a problem, and the governor allowed the permit to be given to an entity, and the mayor, I think, didn't say too much.
But that's part of our political process.
Police, but again, the police. So my point is that some questions say, well, maybe we need to go back and revisit the First Amendment and say, well, okay, fine. If we know in fact that there's going to be a danger, maybe we may have an addendum or something that says, hey, if that's going to happen, bang, this is how we're going to handle it. What do you think about that?
Well, there's a lady here named Leslie Gregory, and she has been lobbying for at least 5 to 7 years to have the CDC, the Center for Disease Control,
okay,
recognize racism as a mental health issue.
Okay.
And when we start talking about hate, we're talking about emotions. And, I've been through anger management, this, that, the other. And we start looking at anger and hate and emotions. Those are all irrational operations. I've been through the system on both sides. I work with USDAs. I work with Multnomah County DAs. And what I find fascinating that at that level, where you're working with violence and raw emotion, one of the most frequent reasons for acting out violently is loss of control of emotions. And that's interpreted as
what about race?
Just a minute. That's interpreted as a matter of respect.
Okay.
So respect, anger, and hate are all interconnected. And if we don't examine that element, just like Martin Luther King said, all we can do with laws and policy is jerry-rig.
But you didn't mention race when you identified those different elements. Is race part and parcel of that?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
I would like to hear what Jamie has to say.
No, but I'm just. But the point I'm making, we're talking about racism and hate. Okay. And so as we go through this discussion aspect of it, I'm just saying it's very prominent now about the whole issue of race. You got one thing, boom, it's race, and then we've got hate.
Right.
Okay. And so we got to be talking to it. I'm just throwing that out to the table and say, let's talk about it from that perspective.
Well, of course, racism is built into the fabric of our economic system.
Okay.
I mean, racism was created, as an economic tool, and so it's pervasive in all our institutions, whether it's the schools, the churches, the media, what have you. So everybody has elements of it within them. So when a hater that really is out there, like, we're going to build a wall, we're going to ban these Muslims from coming here, we're going to clamp down law and order, get out there with your billy club and knock those thugs around. In chief, we got the bigot in chief in the White House. It brings out this the latent racism into overt
It's like a festering,
But I don't think we should be calling on the government to restrict people's speech.
Okay.
Because it'll be used against our side.
Okay.
It has more often been used against our side than on the other side. I think that the solution is to mobilize the people, in large numbers to confront this viciousness on the other side, and we've seen that we actually that they go back in their holes, that they get discouraged when they see overwhelming numbers on our side. And I mean that's what we saw during the civil rights movement, that the Klan went back in its hole, because of the overwhelming.
That's one thing that bothers me, is that we do not want to take away another person's humanity just because they had this capacity for evil. Martin Luther King ability, it's very interesting if a person takes the time to listen to his adversary or his rival. Right, just doing that in itself creates a sense of mutual humanity. And like when Barack Obama was talking about the aspirations for hope or the audacity for hope, when people are encouraged to aspire, they have a tendency to act in a more humane manner. So we don't want to turn our adversaries into two-dimensional objects and start accusing them like Japs and cheat. No, we have to find a way to touch that nerve that we all have. You are equal to me. I'm human. You're human. You have a human spirit. I have a human spirit. This is a big mothership, this planet. We have a big responsibility with finite resources. We as a species are only 4 million years old, but we're right at the precipice of destroying our own livable habitat, like Chernobyl. We have those resources. Now, things like alligators and sharks and insects, they'll survive. We won't. And unless we can take on an attitude that we're all crew members of this mothership, we're going to have people with these psychopathic behaviors that live only in an immediate moment to gratify themselves. That was one of the major elements in the 2008 major recession, which was actually a mild depression. Is that you had people that were given loans for 125% over value. That's a big risk. You had one company that underwrote 60% of the loans on the whole planet. Only a few individuals really were benefiting from that. But everybody's in this big churning piranha tank, churning up, eating each other up, while the guys that own the piranha tank, they're sitting outside watching the show.
So again, here I go again, hate and racism.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, here we are discussing this today.
Right.
I imagine it goes all the way back to Lincoln.
Well, yeah.
And they
We'll
go
go
beyond
well
that
before
point.
Lincoln.
And they've been having that discussion in each administration aspect of it.
Right.
And so here we, again, like I said, here we are today. And you're right. I mean, it's a push button mechanism now. Everybody's got nukes and everybody want more nukes. So who's going to be behind these nukes from a futuristic standpoint? You got me? And even here in the Portland area, we're going to look like we're going to be taking a short break. And I really want us to start focusing on to relate what we're talking about with some of the issues that were here in the Portland metropolitan area. It's the largest city in the state of Oregon, and there are some things that I think we can bring out. For instance, like
I would like to say
gentrification.
something before we go to break.
But no, we can't, because we're going to break and then we're going to come right back. Okay? We're going to take a break and we'll take it right back. Okay,
All right.
good. Think that.
You are watching Oregon Voters Digest. This program can be seen again on these channels on these dates and times. Tell a friend.
Welcome back, folks, to Oregon Voters Digest. Bruce Broussard, your host. We're talking about hate and racism. Hate and racism. And again, like I said, this thing that has brought this thing on now, is in all due respect, is our present president, President Donald Trump. And again, like I said, this so-called talk has been happening ever since Lincoln. In every administration, and we've been doing the same thing. But we get a little desperate now. We got too many nukes out there. We got too many nuclear lures that are out there, and you never know what's going to happen. So there's an urgency. So maybe the racism and the hate we'll probably have to say, look, we better solve this thing so we can deal with some of these larger issues, like economics, like jobs, like all these other things that we are in need of, and naturally population is increasing. We got all kinds of things. So anyway, we've been talking a little bit about that. So we're going to take it from a national standpoint and whatever. We're going to just kind of try to identify some of the issues that are here within the state of Oregon, and more specifically Portland, Oregon, because this is the largest city in the area. And I've got two guys that has got some good background because they've been on they've been out there as activists. When they're not activists, just people, community. I mean, working in community, trying to deal with some of the issues that the little people and everyday people live every day. But that less than 5%, that's not an issue.
I like to say rank and file.
We're going to rank and file?
Rank and file.
Okay, good. Rank and file. I say file and rank.
Okay.
Okay, no problem.
No argument from me.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Well, let's identify some areas here that related, if you will, to the whole issue of race and hate. And when I think about Joey Gibson was the guy who picked up the permit, if you will, they had the demonstration over here. It was something comparable to Charlottesville.
Oh yeah.
I mean, yeah, Charlottesville.
Yes,
it was very comparable to that deal. Yeah. And then that income was the outcome of that was kind of interesting, right? You got me?
Well, on the 4th of June, Joey Gibson brought his folks out. It was a week after the stabbings on the Max, their murders on the Max, which were racially motivated, and so 1,500 Portlanders came out, against hate and against white nationalism and against racism, which was fabulous. Joey Gibson has not gone away, however. He's continued to mobilize his people. Because this is not the creation of one person, Joey Gibson, or even one person, Donald Trump. It is as we said, this economic desperation that even some of the Nazis they put forward a program that almost sounds left wing. They say we're for universal health care, or we're for a living wage, or we're for free college education, but for white people. It's like this national socialism. So there's people that understand that we need something more. We need lower rents. We need better health care. But the problem is, these people are taking them from us, rather than seeing it that it's the 1%. And so we need that dialogue. But at the same time, when people are provoking violence and trying to take over our streets.
Well, I was wondering.
Wait a minute. On that same point, now you can just throw it out in. Now I interviewed Joey here.
Oh, you did?
I interviewed Joey and I interviewed Joe Walsh at the same time, but separate, 30 minutes each, which is very interesting. Joe's position was that, Bruce, we don't identify with those folks.
Right.
I'm just saying that.
No,
so if that's the case, and if he's made this statement, then let's go on and separate that group, and let's deal with it. In all due respect, I'm going after them to interview them now for a minute. You know what I'm saying? But my point is that we're trying to get it to a solution. If we got one guy that's saying that they're not mine, and then so it's like saying, okay, fine, if that's the case, then I take it there are some areas here that you agree over here. But I'm just saying we're going to have that debate. You know what I'm saying? Okay, but I'm just throwing that out there because that is a major piece.
To draw upon my experience as the Portland chapter chair of Oregon Action, and the narrative has to change, and we have to understand that since Metzger was pretty good at organizational management. And when you're in a war, as we are, for the dignity and humanity of man and women, that there's going to be a propaganda element. You remember what Trump said about labor, he's going to do this for labor and that for labor. That never came to fruition. But it was the propaganda that instilled the seed that this guy is saying what we want to hear.
Okay. In Portland, Oregon.
Right. Now,
okay.
I'm talking about Portland, Oregon, people across the board. I'm just talking about propaganda per se, and how we work as movements and coalitions together to combat propaganda. Okay. And we have to look at this as another movement. You see what I mean? If we don't give it context and breadth, we're going to keep trying to use the same tools and skill sets that have been co-opted already. You know, the thing about nonviolence, that's been co-opted. And they try to present themselves, oh, we don't want to do anything to anybody. You know?
That's what Joey Gibson says. He says he's nonviolent.
As long as we're separated, we're cool. The only problem is when the two parties come together, you have toxic outcomes. That's why I was glad when they had the protest this summer, when they put a swath between the Antifa and the,
Patriot Prayer.
Patriot Prayer.
Yeah.
So we have to, this coalition has to be built. And the coalition has to analyze the movement from which we're trying to combat, for a lack of another word. We have to dismantle it. And it has to be done with the understanding of the human psyche as well as appeal to our spiritual needs, regardless of how you want to interpret that. There is a mystical element in all of this. And if we cannot meet those needs, we're always going to be in direct conflict. People are predators, and we're violent.
Now, again, here from a local standpoint, a lot of people are not familiar with the history. Young people especially, because they're not being taught in schools. You know what I mean? They don't.
A lot of young people go to college. I have to say I don't agree with that.
Wait a minute.
I work with educators.
But the majority of the people don't go to college.
Well, regardless, the kids are getting a much different education today. If you go to these schools,
the point I'm asking you.
No, I'm telling you something, because we disagree on this strongly. You're functioning on the assumption that children are not being informed. Children have access to much more accurate information historically than we did back in the 50s and 60s.
So you're suggesting that they are very familiar. If I were to say the Civil War and the after effect of the Civil War through this time, you're saying that we got what majority you think of our young people?
I'm thinking about the kids that just go to the movie and see Lincoln. That's an informative movie.
Well, when do they do that?
When they go in the movies.
What movie?
There's all kinds of teachers. But this seems to be a circular. You have your belief set, that's fine. All I can tell you, I work with educators. I work with young people. They're much more informed. Those are the youngsters that do Black Lives Matter. Those are the young people 35, 40 and under that quit their jobs, making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year, and go around and document police brutality. You understand? So to assume that they don't care or that they're not informed is a wrong-headed assumption.
So we don't have an issue then of race and race.
I never said that. I didn't say the race. We do have an issue with it, but it's a very small minority. We keep overlooking. During Barack Obama's administration, there was a kid that went to a Bible study where they prayed for him and he killed him. You know who gave him that gun? His parents. For a birthday present. You see what I'm saying? So some people just can't reach.
But I'm still going back to the fact, are you saying then that it is being taught in the schools? Formally in American history?
Yes. It was taught to me when I was in high school in 1968 at Washington High School.
Is it being taught?
I have textbooks from books that I picked up that the kids are much more informed, and the teachers or curriculum does entail that information. So this is not 1960 or 70.
So in Portland Public Schools, we are teaching the kids American history as it relates to the Confederacy, what the Confederacy flag is all about, the Lincoln era aspect of it, and all these other different variations and whatever. I'm just throwing some out there.
Well, I'm trying to tell you.
You said yes.
Yes, and but you keep overlooking one critical element. They're much more informed than we were. They're not functioning with the data or the information you and I grew up on. They have much more accurate information, and it's all over the place. I would suggest that you just go to a high school and pick up a history book and you see for yourself.
Well, let me ask Jamie the same question.
Well, it is not my impression that the history is taught about the movements and the way the actual the people power that created the social change. That it's still basically a great man model of how history happens. Lincoln freed the slaves rather than that. There were 200 slave rebellions, and that the rebellious slaves demanded to join the Union Army, and that they did, and they won, and because of that, the war was won, and slaves were free. There's different ways of looking at history, and it seems to me that there's still that great man model of history.
Well, Lincoln was a man.
It's being taught in schools, and that as people, I think people have access to more information through the internet.
Right.
But also people get siloed in the internet to a particular point of view, and they don't see a big picture. But it's pretty hard to ignore the fact that since the Trump administration, since the inauguration, there have been some huge mobilizations, like the Women's March or the
lady that got killed in the march.
In Charlottesville.
When she made the statement, was there something wrong here? Then when she made that statement, when Trump just got elected back in November, and the statement her mother made.
Okay. But there have been.
She's only 32 years old.
There's many more people that haven't been active that are getting active. We just saw yesterday in Boston, 40,000 people came into the streets. 40,000 people into the streets against the white nationalists, the racist bigots, the Nazis that were trying to mobilize in the city of Boston. We haven't seen that kind of mobilizations against racism in this country since the Civil Rights Movement. And I think we're going to see something like that in Portland on September 10th, which is when Joey Gibson is bringing his next round of a challenge to the city of to the liberal sissies in Portland. Because he initially called it a Portland Freedom March Southern Edition, and said that he was bringing Billy Sessions, who is a Confederate monument defender from New Orleans, who was in the streets fighting Antifa to defend the Jefferson Davis Confederate monument in New Orleans. He was bringing Billy Sessions to bring a Southern edition to this movement to Portland, which is, it's a pretty serious development with the Revy boys from the South coming to join the Proud Boys in the Northwest. The white homeland idea in the Northwest, and the South will rise again. But because of pushback from our various rallies since, especially since Charlottesville, he's changed his Facebook page, so that now it doesn't mention Billy Sessions, and it says Portland Freedom March, entire nation, bringing people from all over the nation to help us change the culture here. So it's propaganda, like you say. It's like we know what's really happening, who's really coming, who's going to be there in that rally. But he presents himself as I'm a moderate libertarian. I don't know why these people show up in my.
He's a reasonable man.
Now, what about the third element? That element we were talking about that normally causes all the problems. Are they being marketed to or advertised to attend this rally?
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
We're talking about a commodity when we start talking about this movement. If you look at Metzger, how he developed his following.
I heard you.
You understand?
Yeah, you see that.
He approached it as an advertising commodity type thing.
Okay.
And he picked and chose vulnerable individuals. In the book, 100 Little Hitlers, there's one thing that is really disconcerting. There was a young man whose grandmother was Indian, and he was a very strong adherent and supporter of Metzger. You understand? But he was in reality, a minority himself. It's just like, well, I'm not gonna go there.
Yeah, okay. Let me get back.
But I also want to talk about like the work session. How do we work through hate? How do we deal with a movement that will dismantle this popularity.
Well, we're talking about it right now. He's saying that we're going to have another demonstration.
That's part of it.
Such
That's part
and
of
such
it.
a day. How do we deal with the fact that the announcement has been made throughout the country, and anybody can come, and we've seen the results of a similar kind of thing with Charlottesville.
Okay.
But we also saw a different result in Boston.
Well,
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, how do we deal with that in Portland, Oregon?
Well, in a nutshell, it's a matter of what you call public safety.
Okay.
I attend weekly meetings either on what they call the Peace Community Collaborative, which specifically deals with youth violence, and then there's an interfaith forum that I attend. Those two forums, we have like the chief of police, Marshman was there. On occasion, the mayor Wheeler will attend. And this is approached when you have these types of challenges as a matter of public safety.
Okay.
There's way more to it than just having one component, which is very important, of organizing and expressing discontent. There's another one of keeping the public peace. And sometimes we have to work with law enforcement, like I was talking about the SWAT, to keep those two combatants from actually getting into a violent conflict. Sometimes we have to do that through the processes of our government. And we have to work with certain people in the government. We are a republic.
Okay, well, let's get.
I
like where
and
you're
as a republic, we the people are responsible for our own governance.
Okay, I got some more questions. The other thing is that, again, talking about this event that's coming, that's the most important piece right now. They did implement this one program where they kept them outside. That was on 82nd.
That's right.
They kept them on both sides. But when they came to this event, the event that Jordan did that other day, they didn't.
Right.
They just allowed them it's a free-for-all. No, wait a minute. It was a free-for-all.
It was on the 6th.
It's on the 6th, right. Yeah. So now we get ready to have this one. Okay. What do we want to implement? Do we say a free-for-all? Or do we say a divide? And if you're saying, well, we need to educate the public, because that's exactly what we're doing right now. I mean, I didn't even know about that piece that you were just talking about that's coming up, see? And we need to really let the public know what's going on. So if all the time, a lot of times something happens and everybody want to rush downtown and see what's going on. See, they need to know what is going on. So what approach should we take now? Is it one where we divide both sides, identify both sides, say, okay, fine, you're on this side, you're on this side, and you march down the street, blah, 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 or do we say it's a free-for-all and just look at it?
Well, I can tell you that our coalition, the Portland Stands United Against Hate, and I encourage people to go to our Facebook page to see what's going on. Portland Stands United Against Hate is developing a security, apparatus to keep people safe. To train folks to be on the outsides and the front and the back of our march, so you'll
have individuals there. You'll have a security force. Okay.
Yeah. No, we're in contact with the police, and we're not. They're telling us that they intend to intervene, unlike previous. But our experience with the police in this town is mixed.
To
say the least. So we really have to provide for our own security. And assure people that we'll train and will be trained.
Right. But if that third party is in your element, will you deal with that person?
Third party.
The third party, whether it be whatever.
Well,
we train in de-escalation techniques, right?
Okay.
But again, we also have to figure out a way to present an alternative, to everyone, but even to pull people from the other side to say, yeah, we do need free college education. Yeah, we do need living wage jobs. Yes, we need rent control for everyone, because the most effective way that we are made powerless is by being divided against each other and seeing our neighbor as the enemy rather than the 1%, which is stealing the goods, right?
Okay.
Well, that's how.
What do you think? What do you think about that piece?
Well, all I can say is from my interaction, and that the success of keeping them separated, and the consequences of allowing the two parties to come together should pretty much speak for itself. You can't always trust your oppressor, but when you're dealing with dynamics of power, there's a great movie called Cartoon, where the Muslims are fighting the British, and the British are at odds. And one guy sends his emissary to get reinforcement, and the Muslim sheikh sends the emissary's hand back on it to his general with the man's ring on it. So, you see what I'm saying?
I know.
So, you have to be cognizant that trust is not always something that's going to come about, even though you have to work with people that have hope to forge the same agenda. Book, what's it called?
Let me ask you a question. So then, it would be okay then that if police recognizes the KKK and those types of groups in either area, they should actually they should intervene right then and there, as opposed to waiting until we.
What do you mean by intervene?
Intervene, I mean just arrest them if they find out whether or not they've got weapons or anything of that nature. If they're carrying something that denotes saying it's time to do the hit or whatever.
That sounds like sci-fi. That's almost like putting people in jail just because they're thinking something.
Well, but what if had they intervened in Charlotte, Virginia that way? You think we would have had that issue?
First of all, that's not how American governance works.
Okay, so
I mean, we might not like it. It's just not how American government works.
Yeah, but then it depends. What about the person who's killed? I mean,
well, there's casualties in every war. What about Martin Luther King? What about Medgar Evers? We're sorry they're dead, but they're casualties. And you have to understand, there's always attrition and change.
Okay, so here we go again.
I don't know if there's any magic solutions.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Bruce, because in Charlottesville, the clergy had some kind of a rally, and Cornell West tells us that if it hadn't been for the Antifa, the black bloc masked up kids, they would have been crushed by the Nazis like cockroaches. And then my comrades who were also in the one of these marches came into Justice Park, and they noticed a bunch of young people with guns and these red bandanas, saying, "What's this?" And it turns out they were on our side. They call themselves the Redneck Revolt.
Yeah, okay.
Right,
wow.
Anti-racist white young people with guns who were ringing the park and defending the protesters. At the same time, the Nazis were doing things like calling in false bomb scares around town so that the police would be scattered.
Right. Wow.
So the Charlotte police didn't have. They didn't have the resources to take care of these 600, 700, 800 Nazis. So, like Janie says, how do you plan for that kind of thing?
Well, I'm just saying, you're not aware. Like I said, you probably wouldn't be aware of, let's say, the red bandanas until you actually have the event.
Yeah, right.
And then I'm saying, okay, if you see the red bandanas there, should they come up and tell you that, hey, this is what we're planning on doing?
Well, actually, I know those people here.
Okay. So
I also know the Antifa folks.
That's good.
And we're trying to collaborate with them.
Okay.
Well,
then the other side,
politics often makes for strange bedfellows.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. I guess.
Well, again, I think that the basic security is overwhelming numbers. That if we have overwhelming numbers, that the other side will be discouraged and will not act out.
And we didn't spend justice will prevail, even though it may be flawed.
Okay.
We still have to believe in the basic tenets of our American dream.
Okay.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for everybody.
Okay. But one of the other big subjects that we haven't talked to, and we only have about 3 minutes or so, but we may have to come back, and that takes a whole hour again.
He always does this right at the end.
Here within our community, we got gentrification issues aspect here now. I mean, this is supposed to be the whitest city in the country.
It's getting whiter.
But doesn't that story get old after a while?
Well, no. Well, my point is that you still have people, and the media is making it a point that it is an issue.
Well, the media got to make money now. Come on now.
But let me get my point.
All right.
It's a major issue. There are some people out there that are suffering big time.
Right.
And so we haven't addressed their issue yet in terms of solutions. And since you guys are so articulate, I want to make sure that we have another shot.
Did you see this coming?
We're going to talk about this thing, and you guys are going to be coming back down here so we can talk a little bit. I mean, to talk about that part of it, because I still think that the Portland Public Schools could do a little bit more about educating the populace.
Well, I would
as
take it
to
upon
the
myself to
whole
get
issue
some
of racism.
educators and some young people so they can defend themselves.
Okay.
Because I'm a little old.
Okay.
You
No,
know,
no.
I got grandkids
I was
old
thinking,
enough to teach those kids.
I was just thinking about the history. The history thing has always been an issue here in Portland Public Schools, as long as I've known it.
Yeah. Well, remember Avell Gordy. Avell Gordy went and had legislation introduced into Oregon legislature about curriculum for diversity.
And what happened?
She got it pushed through.
She got to push through?
Right.
So where's it at?
Well,
It might be like a lot of laws. It might not be funded. It might not be implemented, but the legislation is on the books. And that's what, I know she's retired. We don't want to bring her
What
here.
was the definition? The definition of what?
It was the legislation
On what?
on diversity as a part of the curriculum for Oregon State education system.
and they just passed a law this session on implementing ethnic studies in every school.
Okay, ethnic studies.
So,
Well, you know, but not times the folks, and I'm kind of talking about
I'm
black
taking
folks.
hold
I
it.
mean, black folks are kind of like making the statement that I'm just saying to you, that's where the whole issue
telling
of
you what,
race and.
I'm taking you with me when I go and talk to Tina Kopex. We and her got a date. And you can ask, get straight from the horse's mouth, the House Speaker of the House, and you can ask all these questions yourself.
No, we'll do that over here on the show. I want true transparency.
Well,
and
that's
since you
too much
said-
like work then,
And
huh?
and do me a favor. Maybe you can bring Avell and Tina together, and then we could just kind of
I
talk about
respect
this issue.
Avell. She said
And
her
Tina,
son
right?
said she was retired.
And Tina.
Let the woman, she's put in her time, she's done the work.
Well-
Let her live her life.
Well, very simple. And you'll be the spokesperson.
Well, I know you're
for
going
it.
to be Bruce.
No, you'll be
You're
the
gonna be
spokesperson
Bruce.
for it. No problem. No, I'm just saying that we've got issues around, and people
Right.
are looking for some sense of
And they're
solution.
legitimate.
And we want to make sure that it is a community across the board. I mean, I think a lot of people don't
But
like
the
this
younger
idea.
generation
a lot-
taking on the
a lot of-
baton
A
now,
lot of people don't
Bruce.
like this idea of the idea that this is the whitest city. You know, they just like to say, hey, look, this is Portland. You know,
Why don't you
it's
get
equal
Maurice
across the board.
Henderson on here, or Michael Fox out of the mayor's office, or C.D. Robinson, some of these young titans that are actually on boots on the ground doing stuff like blackmail achievement.
Okay, well, that's why we have you here.
Yeah.
That's why we have.
And that's why I'm putting it out on TV now. That's why you should have them here.
No problem.
Okay, let's do it.
Pick them up.
Make it happen.
Pick them up. Okay, fine. This has been great, guys. I mean, it really is. We discovered that piece. Again, like I said, that's going to be an upcoming event. And, you know, and you basically got it right here. Basically what's going to be happening, at least on one side. I'm going to give Joey a call. And if I can give Joey a call, I'll have him on the show. And we'll talk about the same concept, if you will. And so now we have both of the major groups. Because it still concerns me about the fact when you open it up to everybody around the country, you still got those folks that are sitting down there waiting to come. And not necessarily coming from our area, right? That's fair. So we need to make sure that we can at least do something about this piece. Okay, so with that, I want to thank both of you guys. I think we're at that point now, right, Dave? Yep, yes we are. At that point, thank you guys very much. It's been great.
All right.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, Dave.
Just like I expected, it was very robust.